Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's Wellness Hour on Mindfulness 101. I figured we do a lot of mindfulness work in this group, in our work here at ATTACH Niagara, and sometimes it's helpful to go back to basics and explain really what that is, why it is that we do it, what the benefits are, and how we can practice mindfulness. So that's what today's presentation is going to be about. And feel free to drop any questions in the comments if there's something that you'd like answered. So I always find it helpful when talking about mindfulness to start by explaining what it is that it's not, because mindfulness is a pretty hot buzzword and there's a lot of misconceptions and myths out there about what it is and what it's not. So I always start by explaining that mindfulness is not just meditation. I think often people find that mindfulness and meditation are synonyms, and they're not. While meditation can be a form of mindfulness, mindfulness is a bigger overarching umbrella term for a lot of different types of practices. So don't fear if you've tried meditation before and you found it wasn't for you, or you had a really hard time sitting still for half an hour to an hour, which is really hard for most people to do. Mindfulness offers so much more than just that type of practice. Mindfulness is also not an autopilot. So I don't know if you've ever, experienced this where you're walking somewhere, you're driving somewhere, and you kind of tune out because it's a familiar route. And 10 minutes later, you get to your destination, you think, oh, how'd I get here? That's being on autopilot, and mindfulness is essentially trying to be the opposite of that. So being very aware of what is going on in the present moment. Mindfulness is also not the absence of thoughts. So we're not trying to make our thoughts disappear. We're just trying to bring awareness to them. It is not about changing your emotions to positive ones. We're not trying to, if we're feeling sad, suddenly feel happy. We're just bringing awareness to these emotions. So we're not manipulating them in that way. And mindfulness, finally, is not complicated. I think it's a little scary when you hear about it, especially, if we think mindfulness is, being able to meditate for an hour. It's really not. Anyone can do it. We all have the skills and tools that we need to do it. You don't need a lot of additional things. You can do it anywhere, in your home, at work, in your car, and you can do it with your internal resources that you have already. So now that we've discussed what mindfulness is not, let's talk a bit about what mindfulness is. So mindfulness is a way of being. So it's not, it is something that you can dedicate specific times during the day to do, but it is also something that you can just do in your day-to-day life while you're working, while you're driving. You can bring some mindfulness into that. It's also a journey, not a destination. So there's no, gold standard of after so many years you reach perfect mindfulness and you're there and you don't need to do it anymore. It's a practice that's meant to be practiced throughout your entire life. And, you can try new things, but it's something that we need to continually be doing to reap the benefits. It's also about being in the here and now. So, we're not focusing on the past and things that happened and things that we'd like to change. And we're not focusing on the future and being anxious about what ifs and what could happen. We're really trying to bring our focus to the present moment and be 100% there in the present moment. Mindfulness is also awareness without control. So noticing what's going on around us, inside of us, but not trying to change it, not trying to control it. With mindfulness, it's also really about intention. So we are setting the intent to practice mindfulness and to be a certain way. And it's like there's a quote that goes something like 90% of success is just showing up. And I feel that that really applies to mindfulness is, just if you set the intent to try and practice mindfulness, you're already winning. And finally, mindfulness is about openness, about being open to the fluidity, the ebb and flow of what's happening in the current moment, and being flexible and just noticing it with curiosity. So people often ask, why is it that we practice mindfulness? What are the benefits? Why should I take time out of my day to practice this? And really, there are a lot of benefits to mindfulness. And unfortunately, I can't cover them all today. There are just far too many. But here are the kind of main generalizable benefits of mindfulness. So first and foremost, it relieves stress. We all experience stress. Some of us experience acute stress. Some of us experience chronic stress. And mindfulness can really help us with that, to reduce the symptoms of stress and also to help us cope with stress better. Mindfulness also has many benefits for our physical health. So anything from being able to get better sleep, if you have insomnia, mindfulness might be able to help with that. Experiencing less pain, a healthier heart, lowering our blood pressure. These are all things that mindfulness can help us with. It's definitely not obviously a replacement for medication, but it's something that we could introduce into our daily routine as well to help us. And if we're feeling better physically, then we're better able to meet the day and any challenges that might come our way, or even all the good stuff that's going to come our way. Mindfulness also helps us to manage our emotions. So I mentioned earlier how mindfulness is not about changing our negative emotions to more positive ones. It does make those negative emotions more tolerable. And it helps us to be able to cope with these emotions so that it doesn't take over control, so that we can still function in our day-to-day lives. Mindfulness also brings us back into the window of tolerance. So briefly, we all have, this window that our emotions are kind of ebbing and flowing in throughout the day. And sometimes something happens that triggers us and sends our emotions into hyperarousal. So that's when we're feeling very, anxious, energetic, and we have all this excess energy kind of inside of us. And mindfulness can help us to discharge that excess energy. But similarly, if the event triggers us and we now are hyperaroused, so we're feeling very, lethargic, sleepy, depression fits into that, then mindfulness can help to stimulate us to get us back up into our window of tolerance. And then mindfulness also changes our brain and changes our brain in a great way. The trick to this, though, is that we need to practice it repetitively. And if we continue practicing it, we will develop new neural pathways in our brain that will help us to cope better in our lives. So how do we practice mindfulness? As I mentioned, mindfulness is an umbrella term. There are so many different ways to practice mindfulness. It's really a trial and error process. So I was very lucky when I was first introduced to mindfulness, that I was able to take part in a program that really introduced a bunch of different mindfulness practices. I got to try them out, see what worked for me, what didn't work, what I liked, what I could tweak a little bit to fit better into my life. And so that's what I'd like to recommend to others as well is, give it a fair shot, try a bunch of different things. You might not like some of the practices that you try. You might not like some of the practices that I suggest today. Find what works best for you and try and incorporate that into your daily life. So while there's not just a couple mindfulness practices, there are things that we can do while we're practicing mindfulness, no matter what that looks like. So I would call those, the basics for practicing mindfulness. And the first would be non-judgment. So we don't want to judge what we are noticing when we're being mindful. We don't want to judge, what's happening inside of us, the sensations, the feelings that we're experiencing, and we don't want to judge what's happening around us. We're not bringing labels to it yet. We're just noticing what's happening. Second, we want to practice mindfulness with acceptance. So this means, once again, not having judgment, but also just not trying to control what we're noticing, accepting it as it comes, letting it come and go, not pushing it away, not clinging to any thoughts or wishing that they were different, just being there and noticing them and accepting what's coming up. Third is we want to practice mindfulness with gentleness, being gentle with ourselves. This is not, as I said, it's something we have to practice for the rest of our lives, essentially, and you don't get to a point where you're perfect at it. We're humans, our brains, are easily distracted. We have what is sometimes called as puppy brain or the puppy mind. So think if you got a new puppy and you're trying to train it, you're not going to train it in a day. You're going to try and teach it a new trick and it's going to run off and you're going to have to bring it back. And our mind is very much like that as well. We are going to get distracted. So that's where that acceptance comes in. We are going to get distracted. It's going to happen. And we just need to be gentle when we notice, what is it that distracted us? And then gently bring our mind back to our mindfulness practice. And then finally, we want to use compassionate curiosity. So compassionate being, let's be kind to ourselves. Let's be gentle and kind as we're practicing and we're getting distracted, or as things are coming up for us that we might not like, we're being kind to ourselves. And also just being curious. So what is coming up for us? Let's be open to how the present moment is ebbing and flowing, and just notice, where it's taking us. Some more skills when we're practicing mindfulness. DBT has a great set of 6 skills called the what and how skills for practicing mindfulness. So like I said, it's 3 skills divided into either what skills or how skills. And first of all, the what skills. These are skills that tell us what we should be doing when we're practicing mindfulness. So the first one is to observe. We want to notice the sensations in our minds and bodies without labeling them or trying to control them. So for example, if you're sitting right now watching this, just noticing where the seat contacts your body. Not trying to describe, is your seat hard? Is it a soft cushion? Just noticing those contact points and what that feels like. The second what skill is describe. So that's where we would factually name or label what you're feeling or experiencing without subjective judgments. So we're not saying if something's good or bad, we're only using the facts. And a good way to do this is to use our senses, or else to answer the who, what, when, and where questions. And then the third what skill is participate. Go with the flow and throw yourself completely into whatever is happening right now. I like to use the expression dance like no one's watching. So just throwing yourself into the moment, being completely there, not kind of caring what others are thinking or saying, and just doing what you feel like doing, what your body feels like doing. And then the next 3 skills for DBT mindfulness is how skills. So this is telling us how we should be practicing mindfulness. And the first is non-judgmentally, which we've already kind of touched on. So we want to see, acknowledge, and accept the good and the bad without judging or analyzing. Good and bad things are going to happen around us. We're going to have good and bad thoughts. And while we're practicing mindfulness, it's not the time to be judging these or thinking they should be different. It's just noticing them as they come. We also want to practice mindfulness when mindfully. So that's being completely present in the moment and doing only one thing at a time. Keep coming back to this one thing if you get distracted. As humans, we all multitask. It happens. And when we're multitasking, we're not committing to any one task mindfully. It's very hard to be mindful when we're multitasking. So we really want to take a step back, pick one task and be 100% there for that task. And similarly, how your mind will be distracted, you will be distracted. An email will come in and you'll kind of look to it, or you'll remember something else that you're supposed to be doing. And that's okay, that's going to happen. And that's where we're just going to be gentle with ourselves and do our best to just keep coming back to the thing that we're trying to do mindfully. And the last how skill is effectively. So do what needs to be done in this moment to achieve your goals, focusing on what works. Act according to the current situation and reality. So when we're practicing mindfulness effectively, we're not paying attention to, what's fair and what's not fair. We are mindfully acting on what will help us to achieve our goal. So a great example of this is, say you're driving and you notice the car beside you is trying to cut you off. Your initial reaction might be, that's not fair. So you're pushing on the gas, you're not letting them get in front of you, and you're getting more and more frustrated. How dare this person try and do that? If we're practicing mindfulness effectively, what we might do instead is, lay off the gas a little bit, put on the brakes a bit, and just let the car go in front of us. It's not fair. We were there first. There's no reason necessarily for them to have to be in front of us, but really it's not affecting us enough during the day. So now that we've covered kind of the basics of mindfulness and why we practice mindfulness and how we should be practicing mindfulness, I want to give a few suggestions of practices you might try. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are so many out there. So I invite you to, ask your friends or your therapist or anyone if there's anything they do that you might like to try. Do your own research. There are so many great books, or even just on the web. Or following this Facebook page or our Instagram page. We're always throwing in mindfulness activities that you can try. But this is just kind of a quick list of different types of activities that are a good place to start. And I always suggest too, when you're practicing mindfulness and first starting out, practice them at a time that's easy for you, when there's no pressures on your day. So maybe when you first wake up in the morning, or when you have nothing else going on throughout the day, is a good time to start practicing these, because this will make it easier for you to call on these skills when you are in a more difficult situation and you can use the benefits of mindfulness. So the first category of mindfulness practices would be anything focusing on the breath and senses. So your breath and your 5 senses are great anchor points for any type of mindfulness practice. It's a great thing to bring your attention back to if you're getting distracted. Mindful breathing is one of my favorites, just because it's so easy to do no matter where you are, and you could do it for a quick 10 seconds and you can do it for much longer. You can do it while you're in line at the grocery store, while you're driving, while you're just taking a quick coffee break at work. It's so easy to introduce this just to get a little bit of calm and bring yourself back to the present. And there are some guided meditations for doing this, but the essentials of it are just breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your nose or mouth, and noticing your breathing as you're doing this, feeling what it feels like as it's coming up through your nose and going down into your body and your chest and your belly, and what it feels like when it comes back up, if it feels different as it's coming back out of your nose or out through your mouth. And you can do this for as long as it feels good for you. Like I said, it's something you could do just a couple breaths while you're waiting in line, and it's something that you could do, sit for 10 minutes and do. Another thing is awareness of the 5 senses. So bringing awareness to our senses, that's sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, is a great way to bring us back to the present moment. And a super easy way to do this is just to take notice of, what am I seeing right now? What am I hearing? What can I smell? What can I taste? What sensations of touch am I experiencing right now? Another great practice for this is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. So similarly to what I described, except then you would be doing, 5 things that I can see right now, and bringing your attention fully to each of those things, and either saying them out loud or saying them in your head. And then 4 things that you can feel. 3 things that you can hear, making sure it's always something different. 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And then a last great practice is the body scan. So really to get in tune with what our body is feeling. You can start, at your toes or your head, and just taking a moment while mindfully breathing to scan down the length of your body and notice, pausing at each area, for example, the head into the face, the neck, the shoulders, and so on and so forth. And noticing what it is without judgment, what it is that you feel in each of these areas. Other great mindfulness practices are daily activities. Anything we do, really, we can do mindfully. So a couple examples of this, we can try eating mindfully. So I know often when we eat, and I'm guilty of it myself as well, we usually have the TV on or our phone out in front of us. And what we could try doing instead, even if it's just for a few minutes, is being completely present in eating our meal. So no other distractions around us, noticing, the temperature of what we're eating, the taste, how it feels in our mouth, what we're smelling. That's a great way to introduce mindfulness pretty easily into your day. Similarly, we can drink mindfully. So when you're making that morning cup of coffee or tea, really being involved in that process, from, picking what it is you're going to drink and getting the water ready and pouring and mixing it all up. And then smelling it and feeling the steam if it's a hot drink, or the coolness on your hands if it's an iced drink. And then taking a few seconds to sip it and let it sit in your mouth and notice what that feels, what the taste is like, how it makes your body feel. Going for mindfulness walks is a great activity as well. Getting outside as much as we can, especially before we get to winter, is always great for us, all that vitamin D. And when we go on these walks, keeping your phone tucked away, you can bring it with you for safety reasons, but maybe keeping it tucked away in your pocket, not listening to music, and just being completely present in your walk and noticing what's happening around you. What can you hear? Are you hearing construction sounds? Are you hearing birds? Are you walking on a hard sidewalk? Are you walking on soft grass or sand? And really tuning into these different sensations as we're going on our walk. You can do creative activities mindfully. So, and you don't need to be an artist to do these as well. Drawing, photography, playing an instrument, painting, all these things we can do mindfully is really just being present as we're doing it, noticing what's coming up for us, trying to represent these through our art, taking in what we've created and noticing how that makes us feel. We can do our chores mindfully. Actually, I have a colleague who really enjoys doing her dishes mindfully, so much so that, she replaced her dish towels and dish rags to some that feel good in her hands. And you can pick a soap that you enjoy the scent of and really make it an enjoyable experience for you. And just notice how things feel, what's coming up in your body as you're doing these chores, whether it's vacuuming, doing your laundry, and just taking time to fold the clothes and notice how they feel in your hand, things like that. And then we can also do exercise mindfully. So yoga is a great example of that. Often we hear about yoga because there's a lot of breath work and we're really tuning into how our body's feeling, but really any physical activity that you enjoy doing, when you're going for your run, being very mindful, or a bike ride, lifting weights, we can really incorporate mindfulness into all of these. And the last category is, of course, meditation. So as I said before, meditation is a form of mindfulness, but it is not the only form of mindfulness. It's still a great one. And what's great is that there's so many different forms of meditation out there now, and everything's so easily accessible. So first, there's guided meditation. So these are really recordings that tell you what to do while you're practicing mindfulness. And I always find these very helpful. Because as I get distracted, I can kind of focus back in on the voice of the person who's leading the guided meditation. And that really brings me back into the present moment. And these can be as short as 5 minutes, and there's some that are much longer. I invite you to do some searching for them. There's on Spotify, on YouTube, Google it. There's so many free resources available out there. And on our Facebook group, every morning, we're leading a live morning meditation, and that would be a great way to start introducing yourself to this. There are also guided imagery meditations. So these are meditations that really help you to visualize a specific scene or event, and it leaves you with cues through it. And once again, these are great if you get distracted a lot, because it's really kind of telling you what to do with your mind and what to focus on. And then there's also binaural beats. So these are really cool. These are essentially two different tones or notes that are playing. Usually you have headphones in to listen to these, and there's a different tone or note being played at a different frequency in each of your ears. And because our brain can't compute both at the same time, it actually registers and processes the difference between these two frequencies. And this actually helps to change our brainwave patterns and our mental state. So those are a great thing to look into. One great app that we often suggest is Synctuition. There's some free binaural beats meditations available on that to get you started, and you can also look for those in other places. All right. The final thing that I wanted to do today, now that we've kind of learned the basics and I've given you some ideas of different practices, is I wanted to lead you through a quick 5-minute mindful meditation, just to give you an idea. And there's some breath work included in this, and it's a great way to start practicing those what and how skills that I introduced. So this is a 5-minute breathing space practice that you can use anytime, anywhere, to regain calm, clarity, and confidence. To begin, I invite you to become physically still wherever you are, either lying, sitting, or standing. Choose a posture where you'll be as comfortable as possible, and lightly close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or you can hold a dull gaze towards the floor or the wall. Bring your awareness to whatever is going on for you right now. Give the weight of your body up to gravity. Allow your weight to sink into the points of contact between your body and the floor, the chair, or the bed. What sensations are there right now? If you notice any tension or resistance towards painful or unpleasant sensations, gently turn towards them and accept them as best you can. If you begin to tense around the breath, then let go a little bit more with each out-breath. Soften into gravity. Notice any thoughts as they arise and pass through the mind. See if you can let them come and go without being able to identify with their content. Observe them as if they were clouds in the sky. Notice any feelings and emotions as they arise. Can you let these come and go? Include everything within your awareness with a kindly perspective. Now, allow your awareness to gather around the experience of the breath deep in the body. Drop your awareness inside the breath and feel the different sensations in the front, back, and sides of the torso. Can you feel your awareness within the flow and movement of the breath? Use the breath to anchor your awareness in the present moment, breathing in the body, noticing each inhale and exhale again and again. Each time you notice your mind has wandered, gently guide the mind back to the breath deep in the body. Now, gently expand your awareness to include the whole body. Feel the weight and shape of the body as it sits, stands, or lies. If you've got any pain or discomfort, make sure your awareness stays open. Cultivate acceptance or acknowledgement for all of your experience. Befriend it. Use the breath to anchor your awareness in the present moment, breathing in the body, noticing each inhale and exhale again and again. And when you're ready, I invite you to bring your awareness back to the room, to open your eyes if they were closed, and to notice how this practice felt for you. If it was something you enjoyed, if it was something that you feel you can incorporate into your life, into your daily life. And I also invite you to reflect on, which of the practices introduced do you think you could give a try, and which ones you'll try this weekend. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Wellness Hour, and I hope that this helped you to gain a little bit of a better understanding of mindfulness and of why we practice mindfulness, and that it gave you a few new ideas on different mindfulness practices that you could try. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.